I'd like to begin with a poem from a 9th century Chinese master. 30 years seeking the sword master. How many times leaves fell, new buds appeared. But ever since seeing peach blossoms, never another doubt. This is a very famous Enlightenment poem from Lingyun or Reiun in Japanese pronunciation. We are here now together online from around the world. It's wonderful to be able to practice together like this. The first line of the poem may seem a bit daunting or difficult, perhaps impossible. As the monk said, 30 years seeking the sword master. Of course, the sword master, the one behind it all, the true subject. 30 years, that's a long time. And he was a full-time monk. Well, let me dare to try and reduce the pith, the essence of the practice of 30 years down to maybe 30 minutes now. It's really not so difficult. If we begin with our own body and mind, with our own breath, and just patiently give ourselves to the practice. We don't need 30 years. Bringing mind and body together, letting mind and body be unified in this practice, becoming truly settled and naturally focused in the practice, we can truly enter the way, truly discover for ourselves this so-called sword master. To really enter the practice, we find that, yes, in the beginning for almost everyone, it's very difficult. But if we give ourselves patiently, we come to the point where we realize we cannot get out of the practice. In the beginning, it can seem difficult to enter, but patiently pouring ourselves into the practice, it becomes clear. We cannot really leave the practice. Oh, our mind may wander for a while, but it only comes back here. It only comes back here. To really confirm the heart of the practice with our own body and mind. That's all we need. The sword master is found nowhere else. It's not a hobby. It is something that we have to give ourselves to fully. This is the greatness of Zazen, Zen meditation, sustained sitting, so that when we get up, the sitting itself gets up and does what needs to be done. Then the practice cannot help but mature and reach its natural conclusion. As this Chinese master said, 30 years seeking the sword master. How many times leaves fell and new buds appeared? How many years did he see this? But he was very dedicated in the practice. Then one early spring, he happened to be coming down the mountain into a village, and he saw, very early spring, the peach blossoms, beautiful, delicate in bloom. And when his eye met those very delicate peach blossoms, the 30 years of giving himself to this practice melted away just like that. And as he says in the last line of the poem, never another doubt. Oh, you may doubt about many things after awakening, but not about this. It is important to practice properly, to see the urges that you have, the so-called bad habits, the mental patterns that you go around and around in. If you can clearly see them in sustained zazen, they naturally can dissolve. You can let them go so that they do not return. Yes, this takes time, not necessarily 30 years, but it does take time and patience and diligence. It is not a hobby. But done properly, it is not only possible, I would declare it is inevitable. Unless you are escaping from the practice, it is inevitable, inescapable, to come to this point where there can be no doubt. If not, see what you are doing wrong and correct it. It is you, the only one that is escaping. And it is up to you to no longer escape, rather than to try to get out of the situation. Simply go all the way in. That's the only way through. Yes, proper guidance is extremely important. To humbly accept the guidance of someone who has been through it. Extremely important. But the real work, the essential work, has to be done by each and every one of us. To put it very bluntly, to finally see that the seeking self, in the first line of this poem, 30 years seeking the sword master. All you need to do is to really see through that very seeking self is undone. To let that very seeking self be undone, null and void. That is the only thing that comes between you and those peach blossoms. Right here and right now. So to stop running away from this, to stop running away from what is right in front of your face, whether it be an internet screen or peach blossom, to see it all the way through. What is underfoot? If you find yourself really settled in the practice and ready to take that next step, we can always Skype. I don't know when I will be able to visit Mexico, Canada, the US, Europe. I will come when I can, but the essential practice each one of us must do on our own where we are. But if you need, we can always Skype. Let me read that poem one more time. 30 years seeking the sword master. How many times leaves fell, new buds appeared. But ever since seeing peach blossoms, never another doubt. "40 years ago, when I came to Japan, I lived in a sub-temple of Myoshinji, the main Rinzai monastery in Kyoto. That sub-temple was called Reiun In. In is a name for a rather large temple. Reiun is the Japanese pronunciation of the Zen master who wrote this poem. I didn't know it when I first came, but as I remember, the day after I arrived in Japan, 1981, summer, Marty Applebaum, who some of you know, I stayed at his home, and his then wife, and Chi-san, or Priscilla, who's now studying under Harada at Sogenji in Okayama. We went to hear the monthly Dharma talk at that temple, Reiun. It was given by the head abbot, Yamada Mumon. Only later did I realize that the monthly Dharma talks were called the Peach Blossom Talks, because the temple was named in honor of this master, Reiun. So what goes around comes around. I'd like to leave plenty of time to hammer out the details of this practice, to see where you are escaping or where you are stuck, and to go all the way through so that you can confirm, each one of you, for yourselves, this sword master, and to know without a shadow of a doubt. Thank you, Sergio, for arranging this, and thank you everyone for being here together.